What we do is we illuminate the news for you, the news and the ideas on a daily basis. We've been doing this since 2004. We're a husband and wife team. Recently we have, Raina now looks after editorial, so I look after the consulting side of the business. I did a course at USC and Fielding's University on media psychology about 4 years ago, and one of the things that I learned is all media is biased. Good media will tell you where they are biased. So that's why we have Courtland Brooks on the Online Personals Watch site. And we also list the sponsors on the right-hand side, so you can see where we may well have bias. Courtland Brooks is a consultancy. We do PR, biz dev, and strategy for internet dating companies. Our overarching goal really is to grow the entire industry. But our underarching goal is to help our clients grow just a little bit more quickly. There's a whole slew of dating communities and blogs for you now. We've broken things out a bit. There's internet dating investments, which is if you're interested in investing or selling a company. If you have a property that you'd like to sell, please let us know. We do those listings free. The only thing we need is a compelling price, otherwise it's not content. We also run an affiliate site, a job site, and a couple of others. Full disclosure, I mentioned these companies during this presentation. I'm a little biased with these guys because I've worked with them in the past. FYI. We're going to cover market overview, public companies, mobile trend, and where the money is. We'll talk about some fundings and acquisitions, some major news, some controversy, a little bit about the future, and some lessons from the Deadpool. And if we have some time at the end of that, we'll also cover up my thoughts on valuations. So, market overview. Let's have a think about the addressable market. How much are we reaching? Well, apparently 1 in 10 Americans have used online dating apps, dating sites or a mobile app at this stage. And 35% of people who say they're single and active have used a single site at some stage. And that's according to Pew Internet Research, and that's from October 2013, so right bang up to date. Across the USA and the EU5, numbers are down. Numbers are actually down year over year. Last year we had 21 million people in the USA using internet dating, and 23 million in Europe. And those numbers are down. They're down because they're shifting to mobile in droves. So let's see what the Pew had to say for the opinions of online dating users. The survey asked, is it a good way to meet people? And back in 2005, when they ran the survey, 44% of people said, yeah, it's a good way to meet people. And it's up considerably. This is a good sign. Does it allow people to find a better match? Again, we've moved up in the world. Online daters are desperate. This measures the stigma, and the stigma is going away. And we're keeping people from settling down. Well, possibly. So, familiarity with online dating through others. Another question they asked was, do people know someone who has used online dating? And shifting towards a majority of people now know someone who's used online dating. Of course, this is very important for word of mouth for us as an industry. And people who know someone who has been in a relationship or marriage with someone they met through online dating. So successful word of mouth, up very considerably. This bodes very well for our industry, of course. 33% of online daters have paid to use an online dating site or app, according to Pew Research. And we know from the public numbers that 2.5 million people are paying on Match, 1.4 million on GOM, and 800,000 on Meetic, and Smart Networks coming in at 300,000 paying members. And we'll go over the public numbers again very shortly. So the top sites, Match was number 1 year ago. Zoosk has taken Plenty of Fish's number 2 position, so Plenty of Fish is now number 3. Smart Networks stayed the same, and eHarmony stayed the same as well. And Ashley Madison has moved up from the 10th spot since last year. And Hitwise has a slightly different measure. Looks pretty much the same. The first 5 positions are exactly the same. So I think you get a better position when you look at ComScore and Hitwise in combination, so we do try and list those on Online Personals Watch. It's getting tougher to do because I don't give the numbers out so often. IBIS World is also looking at the industry. There are not many analysts left standing, but they say the industry is about $2 billion at this stage and growing at about 6% a year. Let's have a look at the real numbers, the public companies. Match.com is running at $800 million a year at this stage. A great success story for our industry. They bought Meetic, of course, but they're also seeing $220 million of profit a year this year. So really, size does matter. They've had a 17% subscriber growth, and by 2015 we predict they'll be at $1 billion a year. revenue. Meetic is part of that number, but we've got the breakout for that as well. We know that they should do about 185 million euros for 2013, and of that 17 million profit. They bought two, and that contributes 11 million to the bottom line. But that's going to make a multi-million loss, unfortunately. But what we really want to do is see how are these public companies performing versus the indices for each country. So we took a look at Meetic, and we looked at the SPF 250, which is their major index. And then we looked at the stock market price of Meetic versus that. And yes, good news, they have actually, over this period at least, outperformed the market more recently. And what happened here is Match bought more of the shares from Mark Siemens Sr. Now they own 87.5%, and they announced that they were going to buy the rest of the company. They won 100%. Spark Networks is going to do about $70 million a year this year, with a $13 million or so loss, we predict. They've got very high marketing expenses because they're expanding into the Christian segment, which makes a lot of sense, really. They've run iDate very successfully for many years. But let's have a look at those numbers. One of our avid readers emailed me and said, have you seen how much they're paying for new users? In fact, in Q3, they paid $11.6 million for marketing to the Christian network and had 822 new users. So using that math, you end up with crazy numbers. That they basically spent $14,000 for a new user, which is completely wrong. The math is wrong on this. But here's the real math. So we had to make a key assumption here. And the key assumption is that they lose 50% of their paying members each quarter, which is actually probably quite conservative. And we actually should take this into the... I'll run this as a post on OPW, and we can get into discussions and try and make this number more accurate. But meanwhile, let's have a look at JDate. They're coming in about $120 per paying new member based on that assumption, based on the numbers you just saw. Now, JDate, again, coming here, JDate's basically paying for Christian Mingle, because they're coming in at $20 per new paying member, amazingly. So how's the market received this? The major index, we've got the Wilshire 5000 for the USA, and actually the market's received it quite well. And I think there's something very interesting going on here, because Christian Mingle has been marketed out so much, they've got a lot more press, they've got a lot more awareness because of this marketing program. And I can't help but think that that awareness has helped drive the retail investors' awareness, and they've just been made aware that Spark Networks exist and they've started investing. They did take a bump right here because one of their major shareholders, who owned 20% stake in the company, sold the entire thing, and Osmium Partners picked up most of it. Now, there's a quote from a competitor here who's a Christian Mingle competitor, and he said, "You can't spend $200 to make $100 and expect the market to reward you." So we'll see how Spark Networks does this year. One to watch. Meanwhile, Friend Finder, also a very interesting story here. Conru's back. He was the original CEO and founder. Now he's back. And so let's have a look at their stock, how that's done. Ooh dear, that's not good for the industry or our investment community. Cupid, meanwhile, not a happy story either. They did 43 million in revenue pounds for the first half of the year, which includes 16.5 million for their casual products. That's an important number. I'll tell you in a second why. But they lost 2.5 million pounds in the first half of the year. They've sold the casual products. They've sold the casual products, which includes Be Naughty and Flirt.com. Let's see how they performed against the market. We've got the FTSE in England. How would they have done? Not too well. They dropped from 114 to 49 pounds. So let's have a look at G1. G1 is the top dating site in China. I think we're going to see them do about 300 million. That market will do about $300 million equivalent for 2015. That's our prediction. And right now, G1 is doing about $80 million a year in revenues. 85% of that is online, and interestingly enough, they're making 15% of their revenue from events. Food for thought. That market is very different from here. Matchmaking is very culturally acceptable, events are expected. And so two main competitors here are BuyHere and Genai. And Match actually took a 20% share in Genai not too long ago, which I think is very major news because of the way Genai does dating. They've really got a matchmaking hybrid. They do, because several years ago, the Chinese market was focused on month-to-month on mobile. Everything was billed on mobile. And the Chinese government said, you're not going to do this anymore because there's too much abuse. You can no longer do recurring on mobile. They basically killed the entire market. Imagine not being able to do recurring all of a sudden. So they killed the industry, and the industry morphed, and instead was taking 6-month memberships up front and morphed into a hybrid matchmaking mode, which is hallowed ground. No one's figured that out in the USA, so a huge opportunity there. Match picked up 20% of Genai, but the real story here is what will they do with what they learn from Genai? Let's see how Juwan did. Against the Wilshire 5000, because that's where they're listed, again, not so good. Let's have a look at Meet Me now. Meet Me is a social dating site. They expect to do about $13 million in Q4. They did about $40 million. They should do about $40 million for the year, but they've lost $11 million so far, Q1 to Q3. Not a happy picture. Let's see how the markets receive them. Again, not a happy picture. So really, we can see Spark Networks and Meetic have outperformed the market. Meanwhile, G1, Cupid, and Meet Me have underperformed, which is actually better than the last time I did this analysis, so I'm actually pleased to see this. Meanwhile, eHarmony and Zeus are moving towards possibly an IPO. In fact, Zeus very likely an IPO this year. So I emailed Marcus Friend and said, what's going on, Marcus? I've just seen your numbers. I happened to look at Compete.com and Plenty of Fish is tanking. What's going on? This looks horrendous. And he gave a very interesting number here. He said 86% of the Plenty of Fish users actually 35, correction, under 35-year-olds are logging in from mobile. So I think that's representative of a lot of dating sites. But this is really a landslide movement in the mode our users using dating. So let's talk more about mobile. We've actually got the rankings. I'm so jazzed that we've managed to get the rankings now from ComScore. These are the rankings from last year. Plenty of Fish was number 1 here. They had a 50% market share of daily visitors at this stage. Now, things have changed around a little bit. Match.com, apparently, according to ComScore, MobileLens has beat out Plenty of Fish and has moved up considerably. I had a chat with Scout, the CEO of Scout, Christian Wiegland. I want to see how he was doing, because they got funding last year. You know, they were almost on the dead pool. They hung on. They're a hallmark social dating app. Been around for years and years and years. They raised money. They've really clearly branded now as People Discovery. They got 150 employees in San Francisco, mainly, and they're seeing 1.5 million new users a month. And they describe themselves as a virtual bar. Let's have a look at some of the numbers. IBISWorld have given us some numbers from, well, they're a little dated, but they're basically saying that by 2017 we should be about $400 million a year for US mobile dating revenues. That might be low. Let's talk about some of the major funding and acquisition deals. Meet Me secured $8 million as a line of credit, interestingly enough. And that's from a company that actually funded Facebook and Google with a line of credit too. They've moved international now. They've got 12 languages, no less. And they just launched Meet Me Plus, which is their mobile premium subscription service. Match increased its stake in Meetic to 87.5%. I just mentioned that. How about We raises $4.2 million, and they've actually got $5 million committed here. So far, they've raised $23.3 million since 2010, and they're getting 100,000 new users a month. But the key distinguishing factor here is they're focused on getting people out offline. So they hook people up, and then they go out on a date. And there's a very interesting quote from Aaron Schildkraut, the co-founder and co-CEO. He said, "We became the first dating site that doesn't want our users to fail." Ooh, boy. Ashley Madison also raised some money. They raised $50 million in a loan form from over 2 years. And in terms of their revenues, they're expecting $40 million profit on $120 million in 2013. We've seen a lot of Tinder copycats come through in the last several months. One of them is Hinge. They're focused on romance. That's their differentiator from Tinder. And they think Tinder's very casual, as do most of us, I'm sure, but they are about romance. And they're based in DC, they're focused on DC, New York, and Boston, and they have just 60,000 members at this stage, but they managed to raise $4 million. Meanwhile, Lightbright started out under Seattle Techstars, and they just raised another $1 million. Microsoft actually backed them as well initially. They're one of their funders. And they started in 2011. And one to watch. SpeedDate was sold to IAC. Not really a strategic acquisition, I think. It was more of a fire sale. It was run round, a bit of a fire sale. Cupid sold their casual dating assets to Grendel Investment, which is Max Polyakov and company. So Be Naughty and Flirt have moved from Cupid under Grendel now, and that's sold for £43 million over a period. And Cupid now has Love Again and Uniform Dating and a single-parent site as well. So they're going to license the software as well. Grendel is going to get £2 million over a 2-year period for licensing the software for running Cupid and their site. Very intrigued that Plenty of Fish has bought FastLife.com. They're one of my, I know them very well. They run really great speed dating events. And they run them at a premium too. In Australia, they charge $80. They give people as much a drink as they want, which makes for a good party. But they charge $80. And they have 2,400 events a year across Canada, Australia, and somewhat in the USA. And they do about $2.5 million a year. So they've been acquired by Plenty of Fish, which is quite interesting here. Plenty of Fish, by the way, is investing $30 million over the next year or so. So also a company to pitch. Step Out was acquired by True. So you've got really kind of an international brand buying another international brand. Step Out is an Indian group dating site. Meanwhile, Meetic picked up a couple of Scandinavian companies. They picked up eContact and Spraydate. They also picked up Pastor's Party, again, another events company, come under the wing of Meetic and Match. Online Buddies had to do something about Grindr, so they've been looking and found Jacked, which is younger skewed demographic, and it's really their answer to Grindr. Interesting backstory. It's actually started by a Japanese engineering student, a master's degree student at Cornell. And half of their users are in China. They were started in 2010 and have 5 million users. That's now under the wing of Manhunt and Online Buddies. So here's some top news. Reorganizations. We have FriendFinder, of course, emerging from bankruptcy. Andrew Conroe, the original founder, is taking control of the company again as the CEO. Lenders forgave $330 million in debt. And Conroe and Mapstead have taken the company back, basically. The interest they were paying was $50 million a year, so that's now gone off the books. We've probably got the makings of quite a profitable company. IAC created a new operating unit, Match Group. This is the writings on the wall. Will they break away from IAC? That's going to get a lot of press. If that happens, that's going to get a lot of attention from the press. Greg Blatt has become the Match Group's chairman, and Sam Yagan, the former CEO of OkCupid, is now the CEO. And they've also, interesting enough, the former general manager of Match.com, Mandy Ginsberg, she left Match.com, became the CEO of Tutor.com. And that's been folded into this group as well, because they're matching people with tutors. So it's not just internet dating in this group, but it's a lot more focused than under IAC. I think Phil Gripsom's got a tough job. He's got one of the toughest jobs in the industry. He's running Cupid PLC now. They suffered some reputational problems last year, and he's now in Edinburgh with 22 staff. New CEO, new era. I think Cupid, by the way, is one of the best brands in the industry, because nobody else has 2,000 years of history behind them. That's a lot of branding history. Somebody needs to bring the baby to life, though. eDarling was bought back from eHarmony. I think eHarmony didn't want to have the international footprint, or they needed a focus locally. And so eHarmony had a 30% stake in eDarling, which they're rumoured to have bought back for about $30 million. Interesting partnership here. We have Snap Interactive partnering with Match.com and driving them leads and business. There's actually more and more of these kinds of deals taking place. I mean, the mentality is, look, if you can't convert them, if they're not attracted to your brands, then it's not a bad idea to try and push them to a site that you can convert them on, even if it's not your own. So I think we'll see more of these kind of strategic deals popping up. But who knows, maybe Match.com really wants to test and chase down Snap Interactive as another acquisition. But they're going to test it for 3 months. 3 months? Really? Okay, so I guess next year maybe we'll announce the acquisition. How about We was launched in 30 plus countries at this stage, and they're in 15 languages. And eHarmony, very interesting, they've launched a premium product. We don't have too many super premium products in this industry, but they're well positioned to be able to launch such a product. Did anybody see The Secret Life of Walter Mitty? It's a great movie, but it's a little clunky. That final placement where I don't know, I wrote a post on it and it was just a little clunky. But that's good. That's good placement for them, of course. A very expensive placement, I'm sure, but good for the long term. And the writing's on the wall. I mean, we really need to start thinking about premium products more. We're leaving a lot of money on the table. I'd say 10% of our user base would pay considerably more because they don't want to spend hours and hours on the computer. They want to get out on dates. And I think we'll see a movement. They said that the results had exceeded expectations on this so far. So let's get into some controversy. There was a survey that was done here by eScore, and they found when they looked at these brands and surveyed their group for awareness, eHarmony and Match, a lot of people, about half the people were aware of these brands. But unfortunately, they didn't find them very appealing. 6% found them appealing. And one of the quotes they had from users was, "It's a time-consuming chore using internet dating sites." We really need to take this to heart. It's a time-consuming chore. Unfortunately, there was a Panorama program which lambasted Cupid this year. Cupid then had a KPMG audit, and KPMG came back and said, well, no, actually, they didn't do this. But hopefully we've got the story behind us at this stage. Fake profiles may be legal, apparently. It's really a legal grey area. If you've got it in your contract, if you've got it in your terms of agreement, then you can get away with it, apparently. And I think we're going to see an emergence of this thing called high emotion entertainment, perhaps. That's essentially what it is. It's entertainment. In fact, did you see the carpal tunnel story? The lady who was suing Avid Life Media because she had carpal tunnel because she was asked to write profiles. So many profiles. So is this an excellent PR strategy? I'm not sure. I'm sure they got a lot of attention on it. Brandon Wade is good at this sort of stuff. Brandon Wade created Seeking Arrangement, and now he's created Carrot Dating. So the idea is members send bribes for dates. VentureBeat described this as disgusting. Now, how do you top that? Well, how about giving a room away for free? That would top that. So the whole idea of Love Room is that you rent your room for free to attractive people. And you can actually, as an option on here, choose to share your bed. We've got a whole host of Tinder copycats here. We've got Choosy, Charm, Pacta, and Swipe. Choosy was launched by MeetMe in January, and their differentiator was that they had filtering. They had message filtering. And then they enhanced it further, and in May they launched Charm. They have another app called Charm, which is based on video, so you do short videos. Meanwhile, Pacta is getting some traction in Asia, and Swipe is billed as Tinder meets Snapchat because they have disappearing pictures, so you can actually send pictures and they'll disappear. Zoosk is preparing for an IPO. That's good news for the industry. Bank of America has been selected. They've got 40 million members at this stage, and they're pushing probably about $200 million a year at this stage. They're getting about 100% growth year over year. Meanwhile, Badu is eyeing Asia, UK, and the US, and they've hired Goldman Sachs. And they said that they're not ruling out an IPO. So it could be another IPO. Let's talk about the future. So about a month and a half ago, I went to Singularity University, which I would recommend. They've got a week-long executive course which covers AI and nanotechnology and genetics and the future of computing, etc. And it's a real escape for a week. So I'm going to start thinking about, my team's going to start thinking more about the future, and eventually we'll want to start thinking about the extreme future of internet dating. But here's a few things to consider. Eric Schmidt from Google said the trend has been that mobile was winning. It's now won. I think we realize this in this room. Another trend we're seeing is that the last baby boomers are turning 50. That's not a future prediction, actually. That's happening right now. The last of the baby boomers are turning 50. I also predict that the internet dating industry realizes most people are average. I think we'll see public perception-based matching. I think we could layer in more information from social networks and people's reputations. We can eventually equate that into our algorithms. We're going to see more genetic matchmaking, simply because the cost of doing an entire DNA sequencing is now under $1,000. It used to be $2.7 billion, so it's actually come down tremendously, ridiculously fast. So the cost of DNA sequencing has really plummeted. And eventually this is only natural. When it gets down to about $20, we might be able to do something with it, which won't be that long. Privacy will hardly exist in the future. And actually I have another blog which I've never really talked about much, but it's As Naked as Possible. That's my privacy blog. If you want to see some of the latest news on privacy, as naked as possible, because I think our reputations are going to be more and more naked. I think we'll see a day when video dating has its day. Voice and video, where is it? We've really neglected both of these aspects of the communications continuum. We're losing connection with our users because we've not figured this part out. And I don't think it's because users don't want it entirely. I think it's because we've not come up with the right solutions. I think one of the things we have to consider with video, certainly, is that people want to make sure that those videos can't go around the internet. That's why Snapchat was very popular, I think. But we need to do the same thing with video and photographs. We need to make them more secure. I think we'll see a day when the African dating market, in the 10, 20 years out, we'll see a day when the African dating market is far more considerable. Already, in fact, does anybody want to predict when the population of Africa overtakes the combined population of the USA and Europe? You want to have a stab at that? I'd say 2015, maybe even this year. The population of Africa is about 1 billion right now. The population of Europe and USA is about it's about round about now. So it's going to be 2014. It's going to be 2014. Who's thinking about Africa dating? Not many people. There are some certain challenges, aren't there? So we've got this issue with fakesters on dating sites, and I think we'll see more clarification on this as reputation becomes more fluid. We'll see sites identified more clearly as being associated with high emotion entertainment. Now, credibility is on the line, really, with this issue, but it's going to be a clearer cut in the future. Bona fide dating sites will thrive, but high emotion entertainment sites will also find their place in the world. We're going to see the day when tablet computers become free. That's going to have some impact on how people are using internet dating. I think that this is the ideal device for internet dating. Right now, they're down to $30. There's actually tablets you can get for as low as $30, but we're going to see the day when these are free. And that leads us on to wearable computing. People don't really self-describe very well, and they lie a lot. I think one of the things that we can do is use behavioral observations and layer that into how we're doing our matchmaking. So wearable computers, the data from all these guys, these things are already working with each other and working with different apps on the iPhone. In the not too distant future, I think we'll be able to start using some of this data for matchmaking as well. Now, I surveyed 16 companies that have failed in the last 18 months or so, and I asked their CEOs for some advice. And 3 or 4 of them got back to me and gave us some advice. This was only a few days ago, so I just thought I'd put this in here because it'd be useful for you. So Like It failed, and the CEO said, you've got to focus on mobile. You've got to spend 5 to 10 grand on usertesting.com. Get your usability right. Launch in one city. Don't try launching in multiple cities. Get it right on one city first, then move on. Pay for 10,000 users. Look at how you're doing. Look carefully at how you're doing. And if it doesn't work, keep tweaking. Rapid iteration. That's the complete me. They renamed to Like It. Then the Smart Date, and the CEO is French, and he said, don't start in France. That wasn't a good experience for him. Aim for international. There's a lot of opportunity in international. Find a PR angle, and focus as much on the product as the marketing. And that's certainly, actually more so with Badu, I can say. Badu really, really focuses on product and doesn't do so much marketing at all. They tried it. It didn't really work so well. So my partner was the gay answer to eHarmony, and the CEO said, you've got to know your target. You really got to know your target. And you've got to build the best team you possibly can and outsource wherever you possibly can. And remember, a dead database is death to your business. You've got to keep your audience engaged, otherwise you are dead in the water. The CEO of iDate Buzz said, very simply, focus on a very high volume user acquisition strategy right from the beginning. And this kind of mirrors what I always ask folks who are new to the industry. The very first thing you need to think about, before you think about what your differentiator is do you have access to a unique channel of traffic? You know, if you can name a unique, don't name it actually, don't tell me, because don't tell anyone. The whole point is if you've got a unique channel of traffic, then you might have a viable business. But unless you can get the critical mass, don't bother. So we do have a minute and a half left. So valuations. I'm doing more work in the M&A side of things. I'm talking to more companies about buying and selling. Got a couple of clients who are buying. And so we get into this rut. You know, most of the companies that want to sell at 8 to 12 times EBITDA. And most of the companies that want to buy want to pay 2 to 4 times EBITDA, roughly. And so you've really got to break this down. If you're interested in selling, there are 10 things I think that you should think about. You should ask, first of all, the simple question is, I like to turn this around when people come and say, we've got a site we want to sell. It's like, well, okay, so the tables were turned. How much would you pay to buy your site? Knowing what you know, which is very clear, visible information on your site, what would you pay? I just don't get very many answers to that. But that's a great question to ask. You first of all think about the domain and brand. I mean, you can put a number on a domain pretty easily these days. You can get pretty accurate on that. So you've got to think about the domain. What's the SEO position, you know? So you've got to think about the team. And a good way of thinking about the value of a team is what would it cost you to replace the team? In terms of a headhunter, if you had to use a headhunter to find that same team again, what would you pay the headhunter? And how long would it take? Would it take 3 months, 6 months? What's the cost at that time? So you can kind of put a number on that too. What is the SEO position worth? You know, what would you spend to recreate that SEO position? And the same with PPC. You know, a program that's settled in multi-year, that's worth something. How much would you pay to recreate that PPC program? And then the ad partners, are they exclusive? Are they even available to you? You know, if you're buying into these ad partnerships, are they CPM? Are they CPA? How much additional incentive would you need to pay those ad partners to come over to you? And then you think about the platform. Is it old? Is it new? Is it going to need replacing? God help you if it needs replacing. That's a bundle of fun. 7, opportunity cost. You've got to think about if you didn't buy it, who would? And I think that's part of the reason that OkCupid sold at such a massive valuation. Not only did they pick up the CEO, Sam Yagan, which is one of the few people I think that could give Marcus a run for his money, but they also picked up a company that was taking money off the Match.com table, right? So they were valuing it not only based on getting Sam, but also on how much they were losing because of its existence, and also considering, you know, who else could possibly buy it. You've got to consider your potential for cost savings. IP, you know, do they have any patents? What would those cost? And then the hard assets, of course. And finally, a throw in business risk. What's the cost of their screw-ups? Is there any business risk? Do they have any legal litigation pending? So thank you very much. This is the Courtland Brooks team. We've been doing this a while. I've headhunted people from this conference since 2004. We're a husband and wife team. We've been doing this since 2005. And for $2,500 every 2 weeks, we can give you access to a team of seasoned professionals. Thank you very much.